Hello and welcome to Lucia Nota. We're a crafts and sewing shop based in Edgware. We run beginner sewing classes, intermediate and advanced for children and adults. And one of the most popular questions I get asked is, what sewing machine should I buy? And this question normally comes from people who want to start their sewing journey. So I thought it'll be a good idea if I put a video together, which I'm hoping a lot of you would find useful. So when you decide to embark on your sewing journey, you can, watch the video, get some ideas and decide on what sewing machine to go for. The first thing I would say is buying a sewing machine is a bit like buying a car. So you've got several factors that come into play, and one of them is your budget. What sort of money do you want to spend on your sewing machine? The second thing we'll be talking about is what sort of usage would your sewing machine be getting? So if you're an occasional sewer, if you're the sort of person who sews once a month or once every 2 months, then budget and usage would go hand in hand. And then the next thing I would like to add is storage. What sort of storage space do you have as well? Do you want to go for a very big sewing machine and that will take up a lot of space, or would you want to go for a portable sewing machine? Funnily enough, a lot of sewing machines are quite portable, but then there are also sewing machines which have extensions, so you have to bear that in mind. So let's start with the budget. Now, of the market, there are quite a few budget sewing machines, and budget does not mean crappy sewing machines, neither do they mean poor quality. They just mean they're slightly cheaper. The functions are really basic, but they do a very, very good job. And top of my list is this. It's the Brother LS14. Now, this is one of my favorites to recommend because this sewing machine, you can get it for £69.50 on Amazon UK. I know you can get it around that market as well in Hobbycraft, so you can get it in any of your local Hobbycrafts. They often go on sale, so I would say keep your eyes open. Now, this sewing machine is very, very basic, but it does everything you want it to do, more or less. So if you're starting off your sewing journey for a child, for an adult, this sewing machine will work really well. The functions here are quite manual, and so you can, get a good number of stitches on the sewing machine. Now, another budget sewing machine is this Singer Tradition. Now, this one is, I think, is just around the £100 mark. I don't think you can get a cheaper Singer. Having said that, I was in Lidl the other day, and the Singer sewing machines, I think they had them on sale for about £79.99, which was a very good price for a Singer sewing machine. So Lidl is another good place to, they do sewing machines every now and again, so keep your eyes open when you go to Lidl. Find out what sewing machines do. This sewing machine is also a basic sewing machine. It's got manual dowels. The functions are pretty basic, but it can do, most things you want it to do. So these two machines are good for beginners. Now, you also have budget sewing machines around about 150, I think, mark, which are computerized, which means the functions you can set them. It'll be something like this one here. This isn't a budget machine, but I just wanted to show you very quickly what your computerized settings would look like. Now, with the computerized sewing machine, you have a lot more stitches than you can ever dream of using. It's quite good to have. If you've got that extra few pounds, I would say get yourself a computerized sewing machine. That's quite good as well. However, that does not detract from the usage of these ones which are not computerized either. Now, another key thing to note is in terms of loading your bobbins. Now, this sewing machine here has got what you call a drop-in bobbin, or it's a top loader. So you put your bobbin in here, And you've got this one, which is significantly different. You load your bobbin here in the bobbin case. Now, I would say if you're going to get a sewing machine like this one because you prefer the brand or for whatever reason, I would say go to a good sewing class, because it'll be nice to know what sort of troubleshooting techniques and tips you would need if you ever ran into trouble with this. Because I can assure you, if you ran into some trouble while trying to troubleshoot this particular one, I dare say it could actually end your sewing journey before it begins, because it will get quite frustrating. So I would say go to a good sewing class so they can advise you on how to troubleshoot that particular one. If not, just stick with this one. This one's quite easy to use. Now, in terms of the technicalities, the differences are quite minimal. They do the same job, so I will not get excessively hung up on which one to go for. Now, I'll just throw this in very quickly. A lot of people ask me which is the best brand. It's just like asking me which is the best brand, Mercedes or BMW or a Lexus, or I couldn't tell you. It's a user's preference. Now, I've got a brother, I've got a Singer, I've got a Janome, and each of them I bought for a different reason. Now, this is what I use to teach my beginners classes. But I've also got this one, which is a pet sewing machine of mine. Now, this is a slightly more expensive sewing machine, and one of the reasons I got this one was because of some of the functions. Now, one of the functions I love about this one is the ability to control speed. Now, it's got a speed slide here, which means I can slow it down to the slowest possible, or I can speed it up, and it goes really, really fast. I find this quite useful when I'm doing projects which requires me to be very, very careful. I quite like this one. It's got loads of stitches. It's got an embroidery function. No, I mean, I wouldn't call it embroidery per se, but it does lettering of some sort, which is okay. And then it's got some really lovely stitches which can also add some pizzazz to your sewing project. So I quite like this one. So if you've got a bit of money to splash, I would say you can buy, a sewing machine like this. But if budget is an issue, then just stick to the basics. Now, even though this is a fairly cheap sewing machine, it's got the function here. It's an automatic needle threader. Now, I've got quite a few people who I've taught how to use the automatic needle threader. This function is a key feature for people who have difficulties in threading a sewing machine, either because their sight is not as good as it used to be, or they've got shaky hands, or they've got sweaty palm, or I mean, for whatever reason, they do not take very kindly to threading the sewing machine, the needle. So this is a good one to have as a key feature. Having said that, I do not use, and I would emphasize, I do not use the needle threader because I can thread faster than the needle threader, and that's just based on my sewing experience. I've been sewing for a very long time, so it's nothing to do with my eyesight. It's just the fact that I've done it for such a long time. I just go there and I thread. So that's that. So if you've got any of those problems, then you can get one with a needle threader. Speak to your distributor about that. So we've talked about the budget. We've talked about the bobbin loading. So this is the front loading, and we've got the top loading, which is this one here. We've also talked about your automatic needle threader. We've talked about the stitches as well, or the functions. These ones have got, very basic functions, but they'll be good enough. Now, I'm also going to talk about very quickly about usage, because I did mention that. So if you're buying a sewing machine because you want to start doing alterations for people, a domestic sewing machine is okay, but as your projects get heavier and heavier, then you're going to notice that your sewing machine will begin to bulk. So I would say go for a semi commercial sewing machines that would handle very heavy fabric, so that's something to bear in mind. But if it's just for, you know, your sewing dresses, it's just, you know, purely hobby, then the domestic sewing machine is good, as long as you're not using a lot of heavy fabric. So you need to weigh the percentages. How much of your time are you spending on sewing very heavy fabric? So you've got to bear that in mind as well. So you've also, like I mentioned, you've got your computerized versions, which is this one here, which is a slightly more expensive version as well. So I hope what I've pointed out to you today would help you in making your buying decision. I would say this very quickly as well. I am not, I don't really bear any allegiance to any brand in particular, because I find they all work very well depending on what project I'm working on. There are lots of people out there who swear by a singer, who swear by a brother, who swear by Janome, Benina, or whatever, you know, brands they have. All I can say is, you know, if you're a brand orientated person, that's fine. Look at the budget, look at your usage, and then, you know, make your buying decision based on that. Also look at your storage as well. Where do you want to store it? Is it very big? You know, things like that. So I hope this facilitates your buying decision. If you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to contact me. I will answer your questions. You can leave comments, questions, feedback, experiences, whatever it is you want to share with us, and we'll be very, very glad to read your comments. So I will be coming back to you again very shortly. I'm going to be, my next video will be on sewing tips. I'll just give you a very quick intro to my next video. So I've been sewing for a very long time. I've been sewing since, well, I started sewing right about when I was 9 years old, but I made my very first outfit with a needle and thread when I was 12. So I've been sewing for a long time. And having said that, I still learn a lot of new things every day, and this is, I would like to share that, because it's amazing how we do some things by default and not realize why we're doing them. And it'll be very nice if we could find out, you know, some tips, tricks, and you know, how to make our sewing, you know, journey more pleasant. So it's not just for beginners, it's for intermediate people as well. You'd be surprised, you might pick one or two tips, and you know, that would be good. So I look forward to seeing you again next time, and yeah, have a good day. Again, my name is Ota, and this is Lucci and Ota. We're crafts and sewing shop based in Edgware. We run sewing classes for children and adults, and we look forward to seeing you if you're in the neighborhood, and we welcome everyone here. Thank you very much. Bye.